So this is the last video regarding your term paper for PAD 700. I'm just going to revisit some of the resources that I've directed you towards for this semester. Talk a little bit about how to avoid plagiarism within the context of public administration, and give some tips that are specific to part 3 and some general writing tips. So first, the resources. I do want to redirect your attention back to the public administration journals. If you did not conduct your research using any of these journals, now would be the time to go back and do that. There was also a list of think tanks, and I think this is just a short list, but you'll notice here the last list of several think tanks includes these 4 but several others, so you may want to check that out as well, right? So go through your list of think tanks and see if there are any of them that are producing reports on your topic. And you may remember the list of search engines and databases. The one I highly recommend, if you haven't used any of these in your research, is to start with GAO and maybe the Congressional Research Service. So the last is these sort of alternative news outlets that I pointed or brought to your attention. Of course, we have CNN and some of the major conglomerates, but this particular list is those sources that tend to talk about advocacy work, and they try to do it in a non-biased way, but you will find some of their reports may lean towards a biased point of view. But these are some alternative news outlets. If you've been not coming across groups that are covering your topic, give these groups a shot. The last two, the Federalists, the Federalists and Reason are totally 2 different types of outlets, so it might help to diversify how you go about and not just looking at liberal outlets. So Reason and Federalists, totally 2 polar opposites, so give that approach a shot. So I want to talk to you a little bit about avoiding plagiarism. So throughout the semester, I have pointed out in your papers missing citation. If this is being used as a fact, include a citation with it. In public administration, plagiarism is any facts that are not sourced. It's slightly different. It's in addition to the type of plagiarism where you're copying other people's intellect and claiming it as your own. Similar, but slightly different. So I would encourage you to go back and look at the comments that I've provided to you on parts 1 and 2 and actually try to remedy those issues as individual issues. But more importantly, go back and look at these clips if you have not looked at them before. I can tell there were quite a few of you who did not look at these videos. If I put it up as a resource, it's for a reason. So check them out. They're short and straight to the point. Now, the last 2 parts of this clip here is tips that are specific to part 3. So now, part 3 is the most important part of your term paper in that it demonstrates that you now have a grasp on the overall landscape of the problem, the point of views that are out there, the stakeholders. And so it's an opportunity for you to bring it all together and make a strong recommendation on how to resolve the problem, or at least how to reduce the impact experienced by the target population. So now, this is the prompt that's on Blackboard. You'll notice there's 2 major domains: describe the debate and then identify the challenges. But there's those sub-headers, if you will, that are underneath those 2 domains. So don't forget to address those bullets, which they're here, like which option is preferable to the majority of the stakeholders and so forth. So don't just read the main part, but make sure you're also tackling these bullets underneath those 2 main points. Now, I'll share that I want you to take the same strategy with headers, but now is a great opportunity to go back and remove the question, the full question, and abbreviate. So I'm just giving you an example here of how to do this. Do this for part 1, 2, and 3. So because you were in draft mode, I said, just put the question and give me the content underneath the question. Now it's time to remove the question and put in those keywords that still signal to the reader what you're trying to tackle in that section. So the first example, describe the debate. You can just name the header or the subheader, the debate. and I will know where you're going, right, as the reader. And then the second example is identify the challenges for the decision makers attempting to address a policy shortcoming and improve outcomes. If you just call the header challenges and then tackle the content the way it needs to be tackled, that's fine. But I do want you to start now to clean up your headers and get rid of those sort of long questions and prompts that we provided you with to provide you with an outline. Now, so the tips, the takeaways here are, the first is use headers and subheaders that are brief but informative. The second one, I've sort of hinted around this throughout the semester, but use headers and subheaders to tell the reader, me, which graded component will be addressed in the section. So I don't want to like give you a poor grade because I couldn't find the information that you are providing. So make it clear to me. Don't make it difficult. You're more likely to get a better grade if you make it very clear what you're trying to say in each section. So now, element, and this is not part of part 3, but it is a part of the wrap-up for the term paper. You'll notice in week 13 that you're being asked to post an executive summary. I want you to be clear with your executive summary. Don't make it wordy. You'll notice it's limited to 300 words. You'll post this to the discussion board that's entitled appropriately for the executive summary. But in the executive summary, the only things I want you to do is to provide a brief summary of the problem, the possible solutions that you've come across, whether it be a proposed plan, legislation, or programs that are successful in addressing the problem, whatever those possible solutions you've come across in your research, and then the recommended solution that you're putting forth in part 3 of the paper. So again, just those 3 elements. Don't overdo it. And treat it as if it is the introduction to the paper. But although you won't include it in your term paper, you're posting it as a post to the discussion board. But be mindful that it is summarizing the overall effort. And for this term paper, you don't have to do an introduction. This will serve as your introduction. And if you wrote the problem statement properly, you don't need an introduction for this type of paper, being that it's being written like a governmental report. And so the next item is conclusion. So I told you at the end of the semester, I talked to you about the introduction and the conclusion. The conclusion for this report, or your term paper, is optional, meaning it's not required. There will be no points taken off if you don't put a really fancy conclusion at the end of your report. However, if you do opt to include a conclusion, it needs to follow these 6 points: a brief summary of the problem, the affected population, and the jurisdiction, a brief summary of the available solutions, your policy options, what you discovered in your research, a brief summary of the recommendation that you're putting forth, a brief summary of the benefits if that recommendation is adopted. So what are the associated benefits? And also a brief summary of the consequences if the recommendation is ignored, right? Now, you'll want to keep this between 300 to 500 words. So in essence, it's elements of your executive summary with an addition of the number 4 and number 5. So a brief summary of the associated benefits and the implications if you don't adhere to the recommendation. So you're adding just a little bit more wording. If you want to cheat, just take your executive summary, post it at the end of your paper, change the wording a little bit, and then just tackle number 4 and number 5. So now some general writing tips, and some of this will be redundant because it's been said throughout the semester, but I just want to say it in one space. So the paper should be approximately 4,500 words, and that's about 18 pages. If you're at 16 or 17 pages, I'm not going to take off. Try your best not to go beyond 25 pages. I know some of you have several images that you're using in your report, so that's going to increase the length of the paper. So I'm capping it off at 25 pages. If I open up your report and it's beyond that, I'm going to turn it around back to you and take off points. So please be mindful of the wording, which means you have to now start to cut back the wordiness. Use the writing center. no matter how great of a writer you are, many of you could benefit from this resource. It's an auxiliary service that you've already paid for through your tuition, so schedule an appointment with them. It's always good to have a second pair of eyes on anything that you write. Even your professors, we write in a team format. We have folks review our work before we submit it, and even then it goes through a review process. So humble yourselves and try to get on the Writing Center schedule. Now, they're probably busy if you've waited to the last minute, but give it a shot. Third tip is to ask your friends, family, and colleagues, and when I say colleagues, I do mean those that are in 700 with you right now, right? Ask them to review your work. And if it's a classmate, say, hey, could you give my paper a 5 to 10 minute read and just, pick out the blaring things I need to work on, and I'll return the favor by reading your paper. Again, you imagine if you're working in the public sector and you're writing a governmental report, you're not the only person writing it, and often there are other people checking behind you to make sure spelling and grammar are on target. Now, of course, you can use the spell check in MS Word. I encourage you to do so, but you could also install programs like Grammarly on your desktop to give you some feedback on your grammar. I would highly encourage you to do this plus MS Word if English is your second language. Now, I want you to write in a professional tone. As you'll notice in some of my comments on your papers, I'm reminding you that this is a governmental report, right? So you're not writing an English prose or the normal narratives that you're used to where you may insert yourself in the story. Here you are gathering facts. So the story that you're writing has nothing to do with you. So try your best to avoid using the word I and just state the facts. Just get to the point. Be direct. Use active voice. And again, if you don't know how to write with active voice, just turn on the grammar feature in MS Word and it will check for active and passive voice for you. If you're using passive voice, it will let you know where you're using it and give you some recommendations on how to change that to a more direct statement. And then the last 2 points here, write the paper you're being asked to write, not the paper you want to write. I cannot stress this point enough. I would say at least 5 of you have been writing the paper you want to write, and you're not reading the prompt, or you're not open to feedback, or you're ignoring my feedback. And that doesn't bode well. So on part 3, I will be grading harsh for those who have ignored comments from previous drafts, or you've ignored the prompt for the writing assignment altogether. So here you have to take a pause in the middle of all what we may have going on outside of this course and read the prompt and read what is being asked of you and give it your best shot. But don't just sit down and write the paper you want to write. You will fail part 3 and probably the term paper itself. If you have any questions about number 6, I encourage you to send me a note and we can talk about it further. More importantly, don't wait until the last minute. You can write in segments and chunks and make every day have 20 minutes of just writing or fact-finding. But don't cram this type of paper, especially part 3, and wait to the night before. You'll fail, right? So if you have any questions about any of this, I'm available during my office hours. If you need to meet outside of my office hours, send me an email and we'll chat. Good luck and happy writing.